Hey friends, good to be back with you. So I thought I would focus on a natal aspect today, and I'll do the best that I can with this, but it's such a multi-layered and complex aspect and topic that to really explain this, it would take, several hours to really fully illuminate the relationship between Mercury and Jupiter and what the two archetypes mean in themselves and the combination of them and the consequences and the relationship between the two of them. So I'll give you the synopsis of all of that in this video, but I will be doing a webinar in the future later on this year, probably November, where I'll be talking specifically about Jupiter, Pluto, the social outer planets, and death anxiety. Because to fully understand the inconjunction or the relationship between Mercury and Jupiter and the relationship between any outer planet that comes 8th house from 12th house, to really understand that planet in any aspect to an inner planet or to another outer planet, you really have to understand how we deal with death as human beings, how we wrestle with death anxiety, and how Pluto, Scorpio, the 8th house, how that really precedes and why that precedes Sagittarius, Jupiter, and the 9th house. So if you're interested in the really deep lessons and my long lectures and dissertations, then you'll probably want to subscribe to my website, because I do a lot of talking over there. So we've gotten very much into a lot of these concepts, but I'll do my best to give you the short version here. So Scorpio is where we deal with anxiety, death, ups and downs, difficulties. It is where we find the reservoir of darkness and the occult and what is considered unwanted, taboo. That is all contained within the 8th house and with Scorpio. So with the Scorpio level of human development, personally and societally, because societies are made up of individuals, at the Scorpio level of evolvement, we have to deal with our death anxiety, which is the main motivator for all human behavior. So as consciousness occurred, we realized that we would die. So consciousness and the knowledge of loss of it, loss of ourselves, knowledge of death, they're very much two sides of the same coin. So as we developed as humans and came to realize that we could and would die, we developed rituals. Our first Jupiterian, Sagittarian rituals, because we find religious ritual in Sagittarius, that is a result of death. That's related to burials. That came out of burials. It came out of a way to commemorate and explain and deal with death. So we find our death, darkness, fears, crisis, and anxieties all in the same area of life in Scorpio. So how we deal with those anxieties, how we deal with death anxiety, is then the main motivator for what occurs in the next stage of evolution, of growth. And that is, what do we believe in? So societies made up stories to explain death and to make it palatable to the human mind, to invent ways of understanding death that made it comforting, that made us able to live with the knowledge of annihilation. So this mortal fear that we have is very much the basis for the cultural mythology that developed, which in Sagittarius, that fear becomes belief. It becomes religion. It becomes our moral guidance that we follow. So how we deal with Scorpio stuff is very much the precursor to what occurs in Sagittarius. What kind of comforting beliefs do we immerse ourselves in? What kind of stories do we adopt to be able to deal with our anxieties? And then how we develop in Sagittarius, it very much determines what stage we get to in Capricorn, and then our development in Capricorn very much depends on what stage we arrive at, actually, at the stage of Uranus, and what goes on there then determines what happens in Pisces. So you have to understand what Jupiter is, and it is comforting belief. It is also what we seek out to learn what might be more true. So it's how we explore belief. Mercury in Gemini is opposite on the wheel to Sagittarius and Jupiter. So Mercury in Gemini, Gemini itself is the symbol, it's the letter. Language and the abstract mind, the abstraction of symbols and letters, that's Sagittarius, it's the higher mind. So the fact, what happened, that's Gemini. Gemini is what's current. It is what is in our daily life. It is the elementary mind, elementary education. So it is the small occurrences that the abstract mind turns into stories, turns into mythologies. It combines the basic symbols of Gemini to become complex language in Sagittarius, complex thought. So when we have Mercury at an inconjunction to Jupiter, we have the letters, the rational mind, out of balance with the abstract, larger mind. So it makes it very difficult to make sense of one or the other. When we're dealing with inconjunctions, it's like we're acting in a way where the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing. We're muting one part of our psyche or our personality and indulging the other one. And then we find that we have neglected or washed away the other need or motivation, and we then bring our focus completely over to that side of things. So there's an extreme behavior, an extreme way of thinking or being when we have an inconjunction. So when we have Mercury inconjunct to Jupiter, we have somebody who is intensely curious, intensely seeking out the answers to the big questions, the big philosophical questions, religious questions, the spiritual questions. They want to know what it all means. So the more information that they collect, the less that they know. And this is because they seek out ninth house or Sagittarius Jupiterian figures to tell them what is true. And that could be books, because Jupiter is published books. And it could be gurus. Oftentimes it's gurus. And the more Eastern or religious, the better. It could be colleges or systems of learning, educational systems. There's some other informational source that someone with this aspect is seeking out in order to tell them or to educate them about what the truth is. What is the real meaning of things? So there is no lack of people in the world willing to tell other people what to believe or what to do or what to be. It's actually a very common thing to find. And people who have this in conjunction tend to find a lot of people who are very willing to tell them what to believe or do or where to go. And this in conjunction causes very meta-magical thinking. And so meta-magical teachers are sought out. It's an aspect that makes somebody very, very prone to believing in bullshit. It's very, very easy to find people who will tell us what seems true, or what feels good, or what intuitively strikes us as must be true. And so the more that people with this in conjunction find people who are going to, tell them the secrets or give them the answers to the big questions, the more they start thinking about it. Now the rational mind, Mercury, comes in. Is that really true? Does that really make sense? The reasons, the reasoning ability starts to come in. The critical mind pierces through what the abstract mind has decided to adopt or believe in. So there's this sort of this overwhelming excitement about, finding the answers. And then you start to think about it and wonder, is that really true? And it washes away or pierces through or penetrates through that inspiring belief that they had found. So people with this aspect end up with this massive unrelated facts because they don't have any framework or map with which to impose those facts on. So they're always looking for that. There's this quest for who can tell them what it is that is most true or most valid. So the more that gurus are sought out, the less educated the people who have this in conjunction tend to be. The less rational they tend to be. And the powers of skepticism always come in, but they need to come in at the same time as the need to believe. So we don't have an either-or effect. So we can apply in the moment the powers of the rational mind, skepticism, good questions, and we can explore what might be true more as we go along, rather than adopting really encompassing, comforting, inspiring belief system and then chucking it all because we find out that it's not reasonable or it doesn't actually make sense. We want to be able to ferret out what's true or not more in real time. So it's easier to protect yourself from believing things that may not be true, and nurturing the rational mind rather than the abstract mind is very much advised. The less metamagical thinking one can indulge in who has this opposition, the better off they are. The more that they are accepting that for some of the biggest questions, there are no answers. To really, really be able to accept that is freeing for someone with this inconjunction. They can finally stop obsessing about what the answer is. People who have this inconjunction don't realize how much they already have the answers. In their quest to know what's true, they've collected so much information, they've educated themselves so much, they have a lot of answers to a lot of questions. And they have to develop the confidence that they can deal with the difficulties of life. They can deal with anxieties. They can deal with unknowns without indulging in metamagical thinking or finding a system of believing that quells that anxiety, to really accept that they could live like that. It's very, very freeing, and they will have a lot more money and a lot more time. Our cultural and religious mythological worldview is where we derive a lot of our confidence, our sense of well-being and connectedness. So when someone reminds us that we have no answers to the biggest questions and reminds us of our death anxiety, when they bring into question our particular comforting mythology that brings us a sense of confidence and solidarity and hope, as humans, we want to disenfranchise, exterminate, get rid of, ignore, do away with that person, that influence that is causing us to feel the death anxiety. So when there are mythologies in our presence, or people that come out of mythologies that are not supportive or in tune with our mythologies, it's not a compatible mythology, because some cultural mythologies are more compatible than others. We can live alongside some versions of the comforting truth better than we can others. Some really trigger us badly. And people who have this inconjunction, they tend to indulge that other mythology. They tend to be curious about that other mythology. They want to learn about it. They think that it might have something in it for them. Maybe it's more true than what they know. So it's a very different way of responding to outside information or to stories or mythologies that may rock our own or call into question our own or allow that death anxiety to reemerge. So that is why these people live in a state of really constant tension, restlessness, and nervousness, is because they do not have that unifying confidence, instilling comforting belief. They're too open to what might be more true. That is not a bad thing. In a lot of people's experience, it is a bad thing because they can't seem to find something that gives them a framework or a reference point for being in the world. They're directionless without this system of belief. But they're so open to what might be more true that there is a humanity in them that few other people have. There's not just a tolerance, but an invitation for who's different, who believes this, who believes that, and a genuine reverence and an appreciation for what causes personal anxiety. So they don't understand that because the two things are not operating simultaneously. We have the invitation to that other foreign comforting belief, and then the anxiety that comes up because we can't believe in it, because it's not reasonable, because we have the powers of critical thinking and the rational mind taking over and dispelling all of that comforting belief, and then it causes us to look for another one because we have to quell this anxiety. So the nervous system is very, very, very active with this particular inconjunction. Having this nervous system worked on or addressed is very much advised. It can bring a lot of peace. Addressing the issues of death anxiety somatically through the body, through the nervous system, is very, very, very helpful. So the wisdom that someone is trying to find who has this aspect really is in stopping the search for wisdom. Stop asking what is more true and start accepting that it is all true and it is all false. What you keep going back and forth between, is it true? Oh, it can't be true. It's not reasonable. It's true in that that is everyone's unifying cultural truth. It's true to them. It isn't true to this band of people who have a unifying cultural truth. But this truth over here is just as true as this truth over here. And understanding that they are all part of the same motivation. They're all part of dealing with death. And if you can really come to terms with not knowing, which is really facing the abyss, facing the darkness, really come to terms with that and be okay with mystery. Allow mystery to be the case, then you can have some peace. You can stop obsessively looking for what can fill in the gap, because you keep creating a gap by confronting what is unreasonable with what is reasonable, and then erasing that noisy, distracting mythology, creating a gap that is creating anxiety because you think you must fill in that gap with something to believe, with more information, and you always miss the opportunity to understand what is in the gap itself, which is nothing. There is no language, there's no symbols, there's nothing in there. And you can search out every guru and every psychic and every teacher and every person who claims that they have the answers. They're enlightened. They've seen and spoken to God himself, and they're all full of shit. All of them. There is nobody who goes off into samadhi and comes back with their third eye open and knows all the answers and knows everything. They're all full of shit. All of them. It's all bullshit. There are no answers to the questions that cannot be answered. So stop asking and start educating yourself about why we ask those questions. Not what is the answer to the question. Why do we want to know? What is it to know something? Look at the epistemological side of Jupiter rather than the religious side. Ask yourself why you believe what you believe. Is it reasonable? Do you have good reasons to think that what you believe is true? Ask yourself in the moment. It makes it so much more clear what might be the case. What is the fact and what is the fiction? What actually happened and what did our meaning machine turn it into in order to make us feel better about the fact? To just accept the fact in itself instead of embellishing it, looking for somebody who can lace it with bullshit, accepting the fact itself. This is where peace is. There's a simplicity in the fact, in what happened. Jupiter is embellishment. It is excess. It is decadence. And the simplicity of the fact becomes decadent to us. It becomes alluring to us. It can even become addictive in the sign of Sagittarius. So where Mercury is in your chart and where Sagittarius is, whatever signs those two planets that are inconjunct to each other, whatever signs they occupy, that's the motivation that those two planets are being appropriated to. That's the job that they're charged with. So this inconjunction is going to show how meeting the needs of whatever sign these planets are in is challenged by this inability to see the fact within the fiction. Not the fiction and then the fact, but to understand how the one actually results from the other. But the constant searching out of causal links to things that may or may not be associated is really a symptom of the inability to be okay with just the fact. To just accept what happened and not to find a meaning, to find a larger cause, or to find the metaphysical cause, to just accept what is and not to extrapolate it to more. This is where the mind can find some peace. Superstitious conditioning can be grown out of. It can be seen out of, but it really does depend on how one is willing to employ their good reasoning ability and their powers of critical thinking, and how in tune it is, how much it's operating in real time with those search for meanings or causal links between facts or events. So there's a lot of intelligence that can come as a result of this inconjunction, and there's a lot of stupidity. It really depends on how well you understand your own motivation to know, then you can find comfort in accepting the randomness of life, the naturalness of life, the spontaneity of life, the chaos of it. That can be something that we can live with. And we can even find confidence as a result of it. So don't be afraid of the nihilism that comes from asking good questions. It can lead you to a place where you can live with mystery. You can be comfortable with not knowing, and allow that knowing to fuel honest curiosity about any number of enlightening subjects, because the mind reaches far and wide for what might be more interesting when we've really solved this inconjunction. We're so interested in many subjects, and we become a wealth of information. So the guru that we think was going to solve our problems or give us the answers that's you. You're the guru. The person who has this inconjunction, you're the guru. You're the one who has collected all the knowledge and all the information. So there's a point where we have to accept that we can become educated. We can become filled with wisdom. But a lot of wisdom is in accepting that we don't know everything. And we can't know everything. And that is what makes life so rich. That is what makes life exhilarating, is that we don't know the next chapter. If we could read ahead and know exactly what was happening, we would lose our zest for life. And so the acceptance of the anxiety, that can turn into that feeling that happens before you get on stage, or before you perform, or you do something that you're scared to do, but you're so excited to do it. It can turn into a zest and a love of the fact of life. It really does depend, though, on how willing you are to live with what is. I hope this was at least able to shed some light on this very interesting and often confounding aspect, and got you a little bit closer to getting to the good part of it, because there's a lot of beautiful things that can come out of this challenge. You can find me on the internet at truthandaspectastrology.com, Facebook, Instagram, other social media at Truth and Aspect Astrology. I'm not currently meeting with clients right now, so I can focus on teaching full-time and creating content full-time, but check my schedule in the future. I'm sure it will open up again, and I'll be back soon with more videos.